What if we enter a recession and that recession causes the NASDAQ to fall 30 or 40%? Is Bitcoin able to hold up in that environment? And I would argue that fear and panic are more pervasive than fundamental news, as we're seeing by these recent pullbacks after these news. And that would make me nervous that we still have the potential to make new lows on Bitcoin before the next bull market starts. For me, at least, when I'm looking at Bitcoin is I do believe that we'll probably test 25,000 in the next week or two. Once that breaks, you're probably within a month of testing 20. And then I would say by year end, you're testing your 15,700 level. So we're really not that far away. I think 3, 4, 5 months, maybe early 2024 from retesting these lows. Once we get to this point, and you're already seeing it, right? So bear market bottoms, they bottom when people get burned so many times that they throw in the towel. We're not there in crypto yet, but you're starting to see where these good news pops occur, and then we see a flush. That's really hurting the psyche of the investor. And that's part of what a bear market does to break your will to make a bottom. So I think by the time we get down to these 15,000-ish lows and we break that, that should really be the culmination final dump out. Whether we get to 12, whether we get to 10, I don't know. But ultimately, I think the bottom is probably put in by early 2024 in Bitcoin. And then we'll have to see if the halving starts to have that impact where we start to see it go up. What do we see about that? But yeah, I think that for me is really important. And then if we look at the S&P here, the S&P 500 is still relatively near its highs, right? So here's your 2022 highs in October. And look at the rally we've been on. But one thing I've noticed is that we had a bigger pullback here. We still have a higher low. So here was your last low. This is still technically higher. So that's bullish. But my guess is we're going to start to roll over and actually make a lower low. And I expect the stock market to start to pan lower as well. And actually, I think by the second quarter of 2024, we'll be at these lows in October. And that's really where that culmination of the Bitcoin lows and the stock market lows could come together.
And we brushed over Ethereum. You mentioned it. Can we look at price targets for ETH too? Because like you said.
So yeah, so let me just go into this chart here on Ethereum. And what we could see is Ethereum still holding technical support. Right around 1,600 to 1,650 is still support. It pierced the low, which made a lower low, but it still bounced back above. Now, if you take that lower low out and you take out this area, you're headed down towards 1,375. And then ultimately you're headed down to about 1,100. Now, interestingly enough, I want to show you guys this. There's a head and shoulders pattern here on the chart of ETH, right? So we have a shoulder here. Here's your head, okay? And here's your other shoulder. Now, your break point, this white line was your neckline, which broke, and that kick-started a move down that will culminate. And I want to show you this because this is really cool. You can actually calculate your target on your head and shoulders. So how low should this head and shoulders fall? You take the highest point of the head, drop a plumb line down right to the neckline. So it's 665 points. And from the break point where the neckline gets broken, you do that same drop, 665 points, and basically you're at this target down here. So for me as a technician, I'm going to start to accumulate heavily on Ethereum if I say if because there's no guarantees in trading, but if we get down to the completion of this head and shoulders, which is what should happen here, I'll be accumulating right around 1,100 quite heavily on Ethereum.
And what if you're wrong? Because I feel like around 20K, everybody's expecting lower lows, and we rallied this first half of the year.
Yep.
So what happens then?
Yeah, so and that's a great question. So what you do is, and let's just go back to Bitcoin. So there's very much defined levels on Bitcoin. So for me, this was the line in the sand that I talked about. Even maybe when we talked last, we were talking about this 31-ish level. If we get above that, then I think that's the culmination saying that, okay, this is a new bull market. But as long as we stay below this level, which was rejected multiple times, then I think for me, at least, I'm in the camp that this is a bear market rally versus a bull market, new bull market.
In our final few minutes, I want to look into next year, past the halving, because as you know, as you mentioned, that's a huge catalyst, cuts the supply faucet in half. In this next bull market, whenever that is, where do you see Bitcoin? What's the range you see Bitcoin topping?
Wow, that's a great question. So for me, I would tend to look at trend lines and going to trend line analysis. And I mean, if we talk next bull market, we're talking fully regulated. Everyone is singing kumbaya, even the SEC, which seems unlikely, but I think it will eventually happen. And I think that you have institutions like BlackRock and hedge funds and pension funds, they're all moving into Bitcoin as part of their portfolio. It's going to be considered part of the diversified portfolio. Having said that, I think what you do is you take this trend line here from the high of 17 to the highs of the 2021 market, and you start looking and saying, okay, that might be a good target price of where price could go. So if we just go like this, and I can extend this out a little bit more, we could potentially be looking at the next cycle high. The next bull market high right now is around 90,000, but I think very likely by that time, this line is a little higher. It's upsloping, so it's probably around 100,000 at that point.